Hi everyone, I'm April, and you're watching The Tangled Cat Speaks, and this is a book edition. So, where were we? I did for October, what was it? Chills, Thrills, and Old Ass Books. That's what I did, or tried to. So, most of those worked out, a lot of it didn't. So let's go with the thrills. The thriller book that I read was The Poseidon Adventure, and I loved it. It's definitely a product of its time. I think it was written in 1969, I think. Late 60s, early 70s, around there. I know the original movie was early 70s, so around that time period. It's definitely a product of its time in that there's the way that women are treated, the way that women think of themselves. There's some racist remarks, particularly anti-Semitic stuff. But the story, the meat of the story, and the tension and the fear and of an overturned luxury liner is gripping, and I had a fantastic time with it. And then I did go back afterward and watch both the original movie and the, mid-2000s version. Really liked both of those. So Poseidon Adventure by Paul Gallico, thumbs up. And let's see. That was the thrills. So the chills was Dracul by Dockery Stoker. Now, Dockery Stoker is the great grandnephew of Bram Stoker. Bram Stoker obviously wrote Dracula. Now, Dracul is labeled as a prequel to Dracula, but I don't know that that's technically correct because it's, I guess kind of, I don't know, more because of how it ended, but Dracul follows the story of Bram Stoker. Bram Stoker is the main character in this book. It starts off with him as a young child, very sickly. Excuse me, my nose is itching. Young child, very sickly, and there's a family, a doctor in the family who comes and regularly bleeds him with leeches, because back then in the 18 something or other, or no, maybe it was earlier than that, but I don't remember the time frame. Anyway, bleeding was still a thing. Instead of, that was commonplace medicine. But there was also a nanny. Her name was Ellen, and she was the only one who could make him feel better. And he started to notice as a young child, I think he was about 8 years old in this story, when the story begins, and he started noticing there were times where her eyes looked different colors. Sometimes they're very bright and blue, and other times they kind of look gold, and other times they look gray. And her appearance, sometimes she just looks run down, and other times she just looks beautiful and young and vibrant. And he's got a sister who's a year younger, and those two are the closest in the family, and she's very good at drawing. And one day she goes to her brother and says, "Hey, look at these women that I've drawn." And he's looking through her sketchbook, and he's like, "Well, these are very good drawings." She's like, "Yeah, they're not different people though. It's the same person. And for whatever reason, I can't get the actual, what I see when I look at this person. The person she's drawing is Nanny Ellen. And every time she draws her, it looks like a completely different woman." Nana Ellen seems to be the only one who can really help his bouts of sickness, because he tends to get fevers and chills and goes into unconsciousness from time to time. And it's during those times she'll kick everybody out of the room, even the doctor, and stay with him overnight. And then she leaves before anybody else gets up. She's gone. Nobody knows where she's at. She's gone for a couple of days, and that kind of pisses off the parents. But they don't have anybody else, because this is also in the time. This is all in Ireland, and this is during the famine. So, there's a lot of people dying. There's a lot of reference to unmarked graves because of people who have either killed themselves or killed themselves after killing their family members because they just realize they can't feed them. So there's these unhallowed, unblessed cemetery plots. Vampires. So there's all these creepy things that they're noticing about Nana Ellen. But snooping is basically what the brother and sister were doing. She found out they were snooping, and she just said, nope, I gotta leave. She took off, never came back. A lot of their memories kind of just faded, but as they were in older, some of those memories started to come back. So then they kind of reopened the question of what was going on with Nana Ellen, and why now is Bram suddenly star athlete, very healthy, very strong, when he was so sickly. What did Nana Ellen do? And the last time she healed him, that suddenly he's perfect, more than perfect. So that kind of sets up a little bit of the story, but it's a really, really good story. I very, very much enjoyed it. I don't have it here to show you because I did already put it in a little free library. I decided not to keep that one, even though I did have kept the original Dracula story. It's very, very good, but not something that I thought that I would reread. And I finished it like mid-October, so I thought I'm going to go put it in the little free library so somebody else can have a little fright. Really good, though. I did enjoy it. And speaking of Bram Stoker, I did read on my Kindle several short stories by Bram Stoker. We always tend to think of him as just the guy who wrote Dracula. But he's got several short stories, and I spent a couple of nights reading this. Like, when I say short, they're like 20 pages, anywhere from 20 to maybe 75 pages, depending on the story. There was, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 short stories that I read by Bram Stoker. The first one was Dracula's Guest, which, if I remember correctly, I think that this story was a part of the original manuscript that Bram Stoker had written for Dracula, but it was cut and then later on published as its own short story. This one involves a man. Because I read these all kind of back to back and they were short, my memory isn't clear on them. I know that I enjoyed a few of them, and there were some that were just kind of But Dracula's Guest, there was a guy, he's traveling, and he's somewhere in Wallachia, where Dracula is from. And he's on a carriage, and then the driver is taking him to wherever it is he needs to go. And then he had heard a story of this old abandoned building, and he thought it would be cool to explore it. And everybody's like, no, don't go there. And he was like, well, okay, fine. But as the carriage is getting closer to the turnoff to wherever this weird building is, he's like, well, let's just turn down there and let's go. And the driver's like, no. So he's like, fine, I'll just walk. How far is it? And he was like, oh, it's a couple miles. And so he was like, okay, well, you go to where we were originally going. I'm going to take a detour out on foot and go to this house. Of course, he encounters some very creepy stuff. Since it's, like I said, it's a super short story, I'm not going to get into too many details, but it is titled Dracula's Guest, so you can kind of guess what he might have encountered in that building. Let's see. Another one that I thought was really good was The Secret of the Growing Gold. This one is very different. It's more about a man, and I think it's his sister. She goes missing. Nobody knows why, but this is kind of one of those like guilty conscience kind of things. The growing gold is not about money or gold. It's about hair, blonde hair. She ends up, we find out that she died by falling and hitting her head on the hearth in front of the fireplace, and where she fell, where her head hit on the hearth, her blonde hair just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing out of the rock, out of the stone. So very, very creepy. But that one was a good story. Let's see. Crooken Sands is another one. That one involved doppelgangers. This man is constantly asked, well, didn't I just see you over there? And he's like, no. And it has something to do with the beach nearby, the sand. And he's there is an entity of some sort assuming his physical appearance. So that one's kind of creepy. Let's see. Then there's one called Gypsy Prophecy. This one is, there's a husband and wife, and they come across this gypsy. She tells them that something terrible is going to happen. She's very, very specific about it. She sees blood, his wife's blood, on his hands. And so they're like trying anything and everything to make sure that nothing bad happens. And it's to keep the prophecy from coming true, because they actually kind of believe her. The outcome of it is pretty cool. There's one called The Coming of Abel Brehenna, I think it's pronounced. This is about a woman. She's engaged to this guy, and him and his friend are both working on, I think they're working on ships. I can't remember what it is they do. Like fishing, I think. And he goes missing right before they're about to, because I think in England they did what was called bands, which is basically meaning they're gonna advertise in a way to the town that they're going to get married, and they have to wait a certain amount of time after putting up those notices before they can actually get married. And he disappears right before they are allowed to actually get married. Is Abel actually dead? I don't know. You should read it. It's really good. The Coming of Abel Brehenna. That one was more of a thriller than it is scary. It wasn't really scary, but it was just like, oh no. There was some other ones that I don't really remember what they were about. The Squaw, The Burial of the Rats, and A Dreaming of Red Hands. I don't remember what those three were about. So they must have just been kind of meh. But I was just really excited to read these short stories by Bram Stoker, because like I said, I only knew him from Dracula. So I had a really, really good time with that. And then another chiller, scary book that I read was this one, Piñata, by Leopold Gout. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. This is a Hispanic, a Mexican type story. Particularly like Aztec history. Nahua is what it's called. And this woman, she's an American, but her family is from this area in Central America. I can't remember the name of the town. I wonder if it's even here. Yeah, well, it's in Mexico, but it doesn't really say the city. She's from New York. She's an architect. She goes to this city in Mexico to help renovate a church, an abbey, into a hotel. And it's very difficult for her because she's a woman, and everybody that she's dealing with what's the word I'm looking for? They don't like having a woman boss, just constantly undermining her authority. But in the meantime, they find this in the Abbey. They find this hole in the wall, and then they, kind of figure how they're going to patch it up. But then they realize there's another room behind this wall, and in there they find all of these old Aztec, Nahua artifacts. And her daughter, she's got her two daughters with her. One is a teenager, the other is a preteen. The younger daughter is just a very joyous and happy little girl. The older sister, she's your average teen. She's not interested in anything to do with what her mom is doing. She wants to be back home in New York with her friends. She's worried her friends are going to forget her over the summer and blah blah blah. So she's angsty. But the little girl is very bright. There's a woman who sees the architect and her daughters in one of the markets, and she's kind of got some abilities. She's able to see the aura, so to speak, of this little girl, and can tell that she is just super bright and open. And she can also feel the presence of dark, sinister spirits and souls surrounding, being attracted to the brightness of this little girl. And she's afraid that this little girl is going to be attacked by these darker forces, maybe even possessed. And when they find this artifact in this weird little hidden room of the Abbey, the daughter is there, the younger daughter is there, and when nobody's looking, she takes one of the artifacts, and it is called a piñata. But it's made out of, like, I think leather, and it's got, like, I think it's filled with, like, entrails and stuff. And the weird thing about it is it's still slimy after who knows how long it's been stuck in this wall. But she's attracted to it, and she starts acting different. Like, they can tell her personality is different. Even the expression on her face and in her eyes is not always her. And they're trying to figure out what's going on. So it's a possession story, and it is really, really good. I had a good time with this one. And then the old ass book that I wanted to read for October. And I say wanted to read because I did not finish it. I got maybe about 50 pages in, and I said, nope. This is the one that I'm telling you, it was huge. It was a big fat book. I don't have it anymore because that's also in the little free library. It's over 1,300 pages though. The Tale of Genji. I wanted to like it. I really wanted to like it. And the translation that I had was done by Dennis Washburn. So it was very accessible, very easy to read. And I was enjoying the writing style that he brought to it, to the translation. But the story itself, I did not enjoy. It's that whole first 50 pages is about these guys that are all talking about their preference in women, and it's all, okay, so I was wrong the last episode when I talked about this, because I thought it was written in 1910. I don't know where I got that number from. This was actually written in 1010, the 11th century, way old, Japan. So I do understand that the way that men thought about women and relationships and everything, obviously very, very different, not only because of the era, but because of the country and the culture and everything like that. I understand that. However, I could not bring myself to enjoy this character, Genji. Freya, don't be knocking my stuff over. Because he just had so many encounters with a couple of particular women, and I'm trying to put this in a delicate way, but he would try to charm them to get them to sleep with him. One was married, another one was not married, but she was a noble, and she could be ruined. Both of these women could be ruined if they found out that they were being courted by this young guy. But he's trying to charm them, and please, 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 I love you, blah, 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 blah. But when they say no, he thinks it's cute. He thinks they're being flirty. When they cried after he forced himself on them, he thought it was because they loved him so much they didn't know how they were gonna survive not being with him when he left. He was very, very selfish, and I could not bring myself to want to read more about this guy. Maybe he has a good redemption. I don't know, but I could not read any more about how he R-word them. I couldn't. But I couldn't bring myself to want to continue reading that, even though, from what I understand, this is considered one of the earliest novels ever written. So I really wanted to like it. I do have still, because I have a version of it on my Kindle, and I had the physical version. I got rid of, like I said, the physical hardback, but I do still have it on my Kindle, and maybe at some other point in time I may revisit it. I don't think it's likely, but I still have it just in case I decide that maybe I want to find out if he is still such a jerk, narcissistic jerk. But I couldn't bring myself to continue reading about how he was forcing himself on these women. So I did not finish the tale of Genji. Totally DNF'd. Audiobook. I listened to an audiobook called The Sons of El Rey by Alex Espinosa. And this is a book following a family of luchadores, which are the Mexican wrestlers, with the masks and the whole persona. I liked it. Wasn't my favorite story ever, but I liked it. It starts off with, there's a whole lot of different POVs. There's the POV of the grandfather. He was the first in the family to be one of these wrestlers, and he was labeled El Rey the Coyote, I think, something like that. And then one of his sons became the son of El Rey, and there was other sons and daughters, and then there was a grandson. At this point in time in the book, the grandfather is on his deathbed. There's, in the midst of all of this family drama, there's the wrestling and how Ernesto came into it, and how he built up his popularity, and then how his son had followed in his footsteps, and then also created a gym to train people, and sometimes they even trained women to fight so they could protect themselves. But further on in the story, this business starts to go downhill. This gym and wrestling business just starts to decline and fail, and so they're not sure how they're going to keep it up. And so there's all of these different things going on, and it's a really, really good story, and I had a really, really good time listening to that one. The Sons of El Rey. So that's really all that I read or listened to. So what are my plans for now in November? So November, I have dubbed, because I keep coming up with my own themes each month, I have dubbed November as Nonfiction November. And my little random number generator chose 3 books for me off of my shelves, and the first one that I've already started, just barely started, is The Lost Tomb by Kent R. Weeks. It is, they're finding a tomb in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt, and they think that it might be a tomb related to, belonging to Ramses II's sons. So I'm just getting into it, where they just went in and they see that there's something in this tunnel, and they think it's going to be pigs. So now I just got it to the part where they're about to go in and find out exactly what's in there. So far I'm enjoying the way that this is written because it doesn't feel dry. It feels just very accessible, very easy to read and follow, and it's interesting. And you know, they're talking about crawling through this tunnel, and that's very close, and you feel how claustrophobic that could be. So this is so far very, very interesting. When was this written? Let's look. 1998. But this is nonfiction. Very much enjoying it. The other one that I want to get to is a short one, and this is a memoir, Between the World and Me, and I don't know how to say this person's name, but it is a memoir about, he's a black man, and this talks about a lot about slavery and segregation and all of that kind of stuff in America. I don't know all of the details of what this book is about, but I know that it's a memoir, and I'm excited to get to it sometime this month. This one is going to go rather quickly, so this will be right after. So I'm thinking mid-month I'll get to that. Then, if I have time, and I really hope I do because I've been wanting to read this one for a while, Code Talker, the first and only memoir by one of the, I'm trying to read this and I'm seeing it backwards, the one and only original Navajo code talker of World War II. So code talkers, they used Navajo Native American language as code during the World War, and nobody ever was able to decipher those codes. You know, they were trying to, you know, they spoke in code because they didn't want the Nazis to understand what they were saying over the radios. And Chester Nez was the last living code talker. I think he may have passed recently. I can't remember. But this was written in 2011. And it's going to talk about his experience and how the language was used as a code. And I think that's going to be very, very interesting. So I really, really want to get to this one. So, yeah. If I have time after getting my 3 nonfictions done, then I want to get into one of my tea shop mystery cozy mystery books in the series. I think I'm up to number 7 maybe. I've been putting off that book. It's called Dragon Well Dead by Laura Childs. I keep pushing that one off because I keep finding other things to read, but I do want to get back to that. So if I have time, I want to get to that one as well. But that is what I've read in October and what I'm planning to read now in November. So I do want to thank you for spending some time with me as I ramble on about all of that stuff. And let me know what you're reading. Do you have any plans for November? What did you read in October? Let me know. And I will see you all next time. Bye.